The blizzard hit on the same morning Rebecca Mason stepped off the stagecoach in Silver Creek, Montana Territory, her trunk containing everything she owned and a faded photograph of the man she had traveled 2,000 miles to marry. She clutched her thin woolen shawl tighter against the biting November wind of 1876, scanning the handful of rough-hewn buildings that comprised the settlement. The stage driver, a grizzled man with tobacco-stained whiskers, hefted her trunk to the frozen ground with a grunt. "Best find shelter quick, miss. This storm's gonna be a bad one." Rebecca nodded, her fingers numb despite her gloves. She was 22 years old, orphaned 3 months prior when fever had taken her last living relative in Boston. The advertisement in the newspaper had seemed like providence. "Honest mountain man seeks virtuous wife for companionship in Montana Territory. Must be hardy and willing to embrace frontier life." The correspondence that followed had been brief but sincere. Silas Thorne had written in a careful, deliberate hand about his cabin in the mountains, his trapping business, and his deep loneliness. She had written back about her situation, her willingness to work hard, and her hope for a new beginning. Within 6 weeks, he had sent money for passage and a simple gold band that she now wore on a chain around her neck. But Silas was not at the stage stop. Rebecca approached the only structure that appeared to be open for business, a trading post with smoke curling from its chimney. A bell jangled as she pushed through the door, grateful for the warmth from the pot-bellied stove in the corner. Behind a rough wooden counter stood a woman in her 50s, weathered but kind-faced, sorting through a box of supplies. "Help you, dear?" the woman asked, taking in Rebecca's city clothes and obvious distress. "I am looking for Silas Thorne. I am his intended bride. He was supposed to meet me today." The woman's expression shifted to something between pity and concern. "You are Rebecca. Silas mentioned expecting you, but that was near 3 weeks ago. He left 8 days past, heading up into the high country, said his traps needed checking before the deep snows came." She paused, studying Rebecca's pale face. "I am Martha Bowen. My husband and I run this post. Silas is a good man, miss, but he lives by the rhythms of the wilderness. The storm likely caught him unawares." Rebecca felt her carefully constructed hope begin to crumble. "When will he return?" Martha shook her head slowly. "Could be days, could be weeks if the pass closes. These November storms in the mountains can last a spell." She came around the counter, her voice gentling. "You can stay with us until he comes back. We have a small room in the back. It is not much, but it is warm and dry." "I have a little money," Rebecca said quickly, not wanting to be a burden. "We will work something out. Can you cook?" "Yes, ma'am, and sew and keep accounts." "Then you will earn your keep and then some." Martha smiled, but her eyes held worry. "Though I will be honest with you, child. If this storm settles in like I think it will, and if Silas is caught up in the high country, he is in for a rough time of it." The storm did settle in. By nightfall, snow fell so thick that Rebecca could not see the building across the muddy street from the window of her small room. She lay awake on the narrow cot, listening to the wind howl and thinking of the man she had agreed to marry, somewhere out in that frozen darkness. She clutched the photograph she had of him. It showed a tall, powerfully built man with dark hair that touched his shoulders and a full beard. His eyes were serious but not unkind. Even in the faded image, she could see the breadth of his shoulders and the strength in his frame. 3 days passed. The storm showed no signs of abating. Rebecca made herself useful in the trading post, cooking meals for Martha and her husband George, mending torn garments that trappers had left for repair, and organizing the chaotic inventory. She tried not to think about Silas, tried not to imagine him frozen somewhere in the wilderness, but fear gnawed at her constantly. On the 4th morning, the wind finally died. The snow stopped falling, leaving Silver Creek buried under 3 feet of pristine white. Rebecca was sweeping the floor of the trading post when the door burst open and a man stumbled inside, so covered in snow and ice that he barely looked human. "Need supplies," he gasped, his voice rough as gravel. "Need them now." George Bowen hurried forward. "Cole Brennan. Thought you would have holed up somewhere by now." The man shook the snow from his massive frame, and Rebecca found herself staring. He was enormous, easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they seemed to fill the doorway. His dark hair hung past his collar, tangled with ice. A thick beard covered the lower half of his face, but his eyes were a startling clear gray, intense and sharp. His buckskin clothing was frozen stiff, and he moved with the careful deliberation of a man who had pushed himself to the limits of endurance. "Was holed up in a cave near the North Pass," Cole said, his breath still coming hard. "Found someone who needs help. Silas Thorne. He is trapped up there, hurt and running out of supplies." Rebecca dropped the broom. It clattered loudly on the wooden floor. "Silas, is he alive?" Cole's gray eyes fixed on her, taking in her Eastern dress and pale face. "You are the bride." "Yes. Rebecca Mason. Please, is he badly hurt?" "Bad enough. Broke his leg when his horse spooked during the first day of the storm. The animal ran off with most of his gear. He managed to drag himself to an old trapper shelter, but he has been there for days with little food and no way to hunt. I found him yesterday when I was checking my own trap lines." Cole turned back to George. "I need dried meat, flour, coffee, and medical supplies, splint materials, bandages. Whatever laudanum you have." "I am coming with you," Rebecca said immediately. All 3 of them turned to stare at her. "Ma'am, that is not possible," Cole said, his voice flat. "The trip back will take at least 2 days in good conditions. Right now, with the snow this deep, it could take 3 or 4. The temperature is dropping fast and another storm could hit any time. He is my intended husband. I will not sit here while he suffers. You will not make it a mile in those clothes." Rebecca lifted her chin, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Then tell me what I need." Martha stepped forward. "Cole, if she is determined, perhaps it would be better to help her prepare properly than to have her follow you anyway and die in the attempt." Cole studied Rebecca with those piercing gray eyes, and she forced herself not to look away. She could see him assessing her, weighing her determination against the brutal reality of the journey ahead. Finally, he gave a curt nod. "Martha, outfit her properly. Heavy wool, fur-lined boots, a good coat. George, double my supply order and add snowshoes. 2 pair." He looked back at Rebecca. "We leave in 1 hour. If you are not ready, I go without you. And understand this, I will not slow down for you and I will not carry you. If you fall behind, you die." "Is that clear?" "Perfectly." The next hour passed in a blur. Martha dressed Rebecca in layers of wool and flannel, over which went a heavy coat that had belonged to the woman's late son. The boots were lined with rabbit fur and 2 sizes too large, but thick socks filled the gap. Gloves, a scarf, a fur-lined hat that covered her ears. Rebecca barely recognized herself in the small mirror. "It is not vanity that keeps a woman alive in the mountains," Martha said, adjusting the scarf. "It is common sense and proper gear. You listen to Cole Brennan, you hear me. He has survived 10 winters in this territory. He knows what he is about." Rebecca embraced the older woman, grateful for her kindness. "Thank you for everything. Bring Silas back safe, and yourself too." Cole was waiting outside, 2 horses already loaded with supplies. He gave Rebecca an appraising look, then nodded once. "Better. Can you ride?" "Yes." "Good. We ride as far as we can, then we walk. The horses cannot make it through some of the passes with this much snow." He swung up into his saddle with easy grace despite his size. "Stay close. Watch where I go." Step where I step. And if I tell you to do something, you do it immediately without question. Your life may depend on it." They set out into the white wilderness. The first few hours were not as difficult as Rebecca had feared. The horses plodded steadily through the snow, following a trail that Cole seemed to see despite the complete lack of landmarks. The sun was bright on the fresh snow, almost blinding. Rebecca kept her eyes on Cole's broad back, focusing on the rhythm of the horse's movement. But as they climbed higher into the mountains, the cold intensified. The wind picked up, cutting through even her heavy layers. Her face burned with it, then went numb. Cole called a halt near midday, swinging down from his horse and pulling supplies from his pack. "Eat this," he said, handing her a strip of dried meat and a piece of hard bread. "And drink, but not too much. We have to ration the water." Rebecca bit into the meat, her jaw aching from the cold. "How much farther?" "We have covered maybe a quarter of the distance. We will make camp tonight near the first pass, then push on tomorrow." He studied the sky, his expression unreadable. "Weather is holding, but it will not last." "How do you know?" "The wind, the smell of the air, the way the birds are flying." He gestured to a pair of ravens winging low over the trees. "When you live out here, you learn to read the signs, or you die." "How long have you been in the mountains?" 10 years. Came out here after the war." He did not elaborate, and Rebecca did not push. Many men had come west to forget what they had seen in that terrible conflict. They rode on. The terrain grew steeper, the snow deeper. In places, the horses struggled, and Cole dismounted to lead his animal through the drifts, Rebecca following his example. The physical exertion kept her warm, but she could feel exhaustion creeping into her limbs. As the sun began to sink toward the peaks, painting the snow in shades of orange and pink, Cole led them into a sheltered hollow surrounded by tall pines. "We camp here." He worked with efficient speed, clearing a space for their fire, gathering deadwood from beneath the trees where it had stayed relatively dry, and setting up a simple lean-to using a canvas tarp and pine boughs. Rebecca tried to help, but her cold-numbed fingers fumbled with the knots. "Here," Cole said, not unkindly. He took the rope from her hands and secured the shelter with a few quick movements. "Get the horses settled. Remove their saddles and rub them down with those cloths in my pack. They need to stay warm, too." Rebecca did as he instructed, grateful for the task. The work kept her blood moving. By the time she finished, Cole had a fire crackling and coffee heating in a battered tin pot. "Sit," he commanded, and she sank down onto the blanket he had spread near the flames. He handed her a tin cup of coffee, and she wrapped her hands around it, nearly weeping with gratitude for the warmth. Cole cooked a simple meal of beans and salt pork in a small pan, and they ate in silence. Rebecca studied him across the fire. In the flickering light, his face was all hard plains and shadows. His hands were huge, scarred from work and weather, but they moved with surprising dexterity as he cleaned the pan and packed it away. "You are very capable," she said quietly. He glanced up, those gray eyes catching the firelight. "A man learns quickly out here, or he does not survive to make the same mistake twice." "How do you know Silas?" "We trap in adjacent territories. Sometimes we trade. Sometimes we share a camp and a bottle of whiskey. He is a good man, honest, decent." Cole poked at the fire with a stick. "When I found him, he was half frozen and in bad pain, but the first thing he asked about was whether his bride had arrived safely." Rebecca felt a lump form in her throat. "Did you tell him I had?" "I told him you were safe in town. I did not mention that you were fool enough to trek into the mountains in winter." But there was a hint of something that might have been respect in his voice. "Would you have left someone you loved to suffer alone?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. "I do not have anyone I love, not anymore." He stood abruptly. Get some sleep. We leave at first light. He banked the fire and settled himself at the edge of the shelter, his rifle within easy reach. Rebecca lay down on her blanket, pulling her coat tight around her. Despite her exhaustion, sleep was slow to come. She was acutely aware of Cole's presence, this stranger who was risking his life to help her reach a man he barely knew. The wind sighed through the pines, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Rebecca woke to Cole shaking her shoulder gently. Time to move. The fire was already rekindled, and he pressed a cup of hot coffee into her hands. The sky was still dark, stars fading as dawn approached. Every muscle in Rebecca's body ached, and the cold had seeped so deep into her bones that she thought she might never be warm again. But she drank the coffee, ate the hard biscuit Cole offered, and helped pack up the camp. When she stumbled in the deep snow, her legs trembling with fatigue, Cole caught her elbow and steadied her. "Can you continue?" he asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "We will be walking from here. The pass is too narrow and steep for the horses. We will leave them in a shelter I built a few miles ahead." True to his word, they reached a crude stable built into the side of the mountain within 2 hours. Cole settled the horses with practiced efficiency, leaving them with feed and water. Then he distributed the supplies between 2 packs, hoisting the larger one onto his own back and handing Rebecca the smaller. Even the lighter load felt crushing, but she strapped it on without complaint. "The snowshoes," Cole said, demonstrating how to fasten them to her boots. "They will keep you on top of the snow instead of sinking through. Watch how I walk." The technique was awkward at first, but Rebecca quickly found the rhythm of it. They set off up the pass, and now the real ordeal began. The slope was punishing. Rebecca's thighs burned with the effort of each step. Her breath came in harsh gasps in the thin, cold air. The pack dragged at her shoulders. But ahead of her, Cole climbed steadily, his powerful frame cutting through the snow like an unstoppable force of nature. Hours blurred together. Up and up they went, following a path that only Cole could see. In places, the snow was so deep that even with snowshoes, Rebecca sank to her knees. Cole would stop and pull her out, his strength casual, almost frightening. "Rest," he said finally, when the sun was high overhead. They stood on a narrow ledge with a sheer cliff on one side and a wall of rock on the other. The view was breathtaking, endless mountains stretching in all directions, but Rebecca was too exhausted to appreciate it. Cole made her drink and eat again, though her stomach rebelled at the thought of food. "We are making good time," he said. "Better than I expected. How much farther? We will reach the shelter before dark if we keep this pace." Rebecca looked at him, at the easy way he stood despite the massive pack on his back, at the calm competence in his every movement. "Why are you doing this? You could have gone for Silas yourself and been back by now if I were not slowing you down." Cole was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on the distant peaks. "Because a man should not die alone in the mountains, and because you had the courage to try, even though you are terrified." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Rebecca felt the intensity of his attention like a physical touch. That deserves respect. They pushed on. The afternoon brought new challenges. The wind picked up, howling through the pass and driving snow into their faces. The temperature plummeted. Rebecca's eyelashes froze together. Her scarf became stiff with ice where her breath condensed on it. She focused on placing one foot in front of the other, on not falling, on not giving up. When she stumbled and went down hard, her knee striking a buried rock, Cole was there immediately. He hauled her to her feet, his face close to hers, his eyes searching. "Are you hurt?" "No, just clumsy. You are doing well. Better than most men I know would do." He kept his hand on her arm for a moment longer, steadying her. Not much farther now. Another hour. That hour was the longest of Rebecca's life. The light began to fade, and with it, what little warmth the sun had provided vanished. Her body moved mechanically, beyond conscious thought. She was dimly aware of Cole's voice, encouraging, directing, but she could not seem to form words to respond. Then, blessedly, he stopped. There. Through the blowing snow, Rebecca could just make out a dark shape tucked against the mountainside. As they drew closer, it resolved into a small structure, barely more than a hut, built of rough logs and stones. Cole pushed open the door, and they stumbled inside. "Silas," Cole's voice was sharp. "We are back, and I brought your bride." A groan came from the darkness. Cole had his flint out instantly, striking a light and touching it to a candle. The feeble glow revealed a small space, perhaps 10 feet square, with a fire pit in the center. And there, wrapped in blankets against the far wall, was Silas Thorne. Rebecca fell to her knees beside him, her exhaustion forgotten. He looked terrible, his face gaunt and pale, his eyes fever-bright. But when he saw her, something like wonder crossed his features. "Rebecca, you should not be here, too dangerous." "Hush," she said, pulling off her gloves with stiff fingers. She touched his forehead and felt the burning heat of fever. "We need to get you well." Cole was already building up the fire, his movements swift and sure. "I need light to set that leg properly." "Rebecca, in my pack, there is a bottle of whiskey. Give him as much as he will drink." The next hours were a blur of activity. Rebecca held Silas's hand as Cole examined his leg, the bone clearly broken below the knee. Silas drank the whiskey in deep gulps, his face sheening with sweat despite the cold. "This is going to hurt," Cole warned, and then he pulled the leg straight. Silas screamed, a sound that tore through Rebecca's heart, and then mercifully passed out. Cole worked quickly, splinting the leg with practiced efficiency, binding it tight. When he finished, he sat back on his heels, his own face drawn with fatigue. "It is a clean break. If we can keep infection out and get him back to town, he should heal well." He looked at Rebecca. "But he cannot be moved for at least 3 days, maybe longer." "Then we stay," Rebecca said simply. Cole nodded. "I will melt snow for water. You should try to get some food into him when he wakes." They worked together through the evening, establishing a routine. Cole kept the fire burning, melted snow in a pot for water, and prepared simple food. Rebecca tended to Silas, bathing his feverish face with cool water, coaxing him to drink broth made from dried meat and wild herbs that Cole produced from his pack. When Silas was sleeping restlessly, Rebecca finally allowed herself to rest. She sat back against the wall, her whole body trembling with exhaustion. Cole pressed a cup of hot broth into her hands. "Drink. You need your strength." She obeyed, and the warmth spread through her, easing some of the bone-deep chill. Cole settled across the fire from her, his broad shoulders relaxed now that they were safe inside. "Thank you," Rebecca said quietly, "for everything. I know I have been a burden." "You have not." He met her eyes across the flames. "You kept up. You did not complain. You showed more strength today than I have seen in men twice your size." The unexpected praise brought heat to Rebecca's cheeks. "I am not strong. I am terrified. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it." Cole took a long drink from his own cup. "Silas is a lucky man." Rebecca looked down at the man sleeping fitfully beside her. She had come all this way to marry him, had agreed to bind her life to his based on a handful of letters. She barely knew him. But he was a good man, Cole had said. Honest and decent. That was more than many women had in a husband. "Tell me about him," she said. "About Silas." Cole was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. "He came to the mountains 5 years ago after his wife died of cholera in Denver. He was broken by grief, but he worked through it. He is one of the best trappers in the territory, and he is fair in his dealings. He does not drink to excess, does not gamble, does not treat people poorly. Cole glanced at Silas. He has been lonely, though. I could see it in him. When he told me he had sent for a bride, I was glad for him. What about you? Rebecca asked. Have you ever thought of marrying? Cole's expression shuddered. I had a wife once, before the war. She died while I was away fighting. By the time I got home, she had been in the ground 6 months. His voice was flat, emotionless, but Rebecca could hear the old pain beneath it. I came west to forget. The mountains do not ask questions, and they do not expect you to be anyone but who you are. I am sorry for your loss, he shrugged, a rolling movement of those massive shoulders. It was a long time ago. But his eyes said otherwise. They fell silent, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and Silas's labored breathing. Rebecca felt sleep pulling at her, but she forced herself to stay awake to monitor Silas to make sure he did not worsen. Cole noticed. Sleep, Rebecca. I will watch over him. I cannot ask you to do that. You are not asking, I am offering. You are exhausted, and if his fever spikes in the night, I know what to do. He shifted, settling his back more comfortably against the wall. I have nursed injured men before. Sleep. Rebecca wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her. She lay down beside Silas, pulling her coat over both of them, and sleep claimed her immediately. She woke once in the deepest part of the night to find Cole adding wood to the fire, his movements almost silent. He noticed her eyes open and shook his head slightly, telling her without words to go back to sleep. She obeyed, comforted somehow by his solid presence. Morning brought better news. Silas's fever had broken, and though he was weak, his eyes were clearer. He looked at Rebecca with wonder. You really are here. I thought I dreamed you, she smiled, touching his rough cheek gently. I am here, and you are going to be fine. Should have been at the stage to meet you proper, he said, his voice hoarse. Some first impression. It could not be helped. A storm is no respecter of plans. Silas reached for her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. I am glad you are here, Rebecca, gladder than I can say, even if the circumstances are not what I would have chosen. Over the next 2 days they settled into a rhythm. Cole went out each day to check his trap lines and hunt for fresh meat, returning with rabbits or grouse that he cleaned and cooked with expert efficiency. Rebecca cared for Silas, helping him eat, keeping him clean, talking with him for hours. She learned that he was 31 years old, that he had grown up on a farm in Ohio, that his first wife had been his childhood sweetheart. He learned that Rebecca had been a schoolteacher in Boston, that she loved reading and music, that she was willing to work hard to build a life in this harsh land. And slowly, carefully, they began to know each other. But Rebecca also found herself watching Cole, studying him when he did not notice. There was something compelling about him, something beyond his obvious physical strength. He moved with a quiet confidence, completely at home in this frozen wilderness. He was patient with Silas, helping him when necessary without making him feel weak. And sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, a look of profound loneliness would cross his face. On the 3rd morning, Cole announced that the weather was stable enough to attempt the journey back. But Silas cannot walk, Rebecca protested. I will carry him. Cole said it as if it were nothing, as if carrying a full-grown man through miles of snow and ice were a simple task. Cole, that is impossible. He must weigh near 200 pounds. Cole just looked at her and she realized he was serious. I have done harder things. We will rig a travois for the steepest parts, but in places where that will not work, I will carry him. They spent the morning preparing. Cole fashioned a simple travois using branches and rope, creating a frame that he could drag behind him through the snow. They packed all the supplies, banked the fire, and made Silas as comfortable as possible. The journey back was even harder than the trip up had been. Cole was true to his word, pulling the travois when the terrain allowed. And when it did not, he simply hoisted Silas over his shoulders in a fireman's carry and kept walking. Rebecca could see the strain in his face, the cords of muscle standing out in his neck, but he did not complain, did not slow down. Rebecca carried both packs now, the weight crushing, but she gritted her teeth and pushed forward. She had to. Cole was doing the impossible. The least she could do was carry her share. They made camp that night in the same hollow where they had stayed on the way up. Cole was silent as he set up the shelter, his movements mechanical with exhaustion. Rebecca built up the fire and prepared food, then insisted that Cole eat first. "You need your strength more than any of us," she said firmly. He gave her a long look, something unreadable in his eyes, then nodded and ate. Silas dozed fitfully, his leg clearly paining him despite the splint. Rebecca gave him more laudanum, hating to do it but knowing he needed the relief. When Silas was sleeping, Cole spoke quietly. "We should reach the horses by midday tomorrow. From there, it is a few hours back to Silver Creek. How is your back, your shoulders?" "I will survive." He rolled his shoulders, wincing slightly. "It is not the first time I've carried a heavy load through the mountains. You are an extraordinary man, Cole Brennan." He looked uncomfortable with the praise. "I am just a man doing what needs to be done." "No, you are more than that." Rebecca held his gaze. "Silas and I both owe you our lives. You owe me nothing." He stood abruptly. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be another long day." They reached Silver Creek late the following afternoon, exhausted and frozen but alive. Martha and George rushed out to meet them, exclaiming over Silas's condition and Rebecca's safe return. They got Silas settled in a warm room, and Martha sent George to fetch the closest thing the settlement had to a doctor, a former Army medic who had retired to the frontier. The medic, a thin man named Horace Albright, examined Silas's leg and pronounced Cole's work excellent. "Whoever set this bone knew what they were doing. Keep it clean, keep him off it for 6 weeks, and he should heal straight and true." Rebecca stood by Silas's bedside, holding his hand. He looked up at her with gratitude and something deeper. "You came for me, into the mountains in winter. I cannot believe you did that. I could not leave you to suffer. Most women would have. Then I am not most women." Silas smiled, a real smile that transformed his gaunt face. "No, Rebecca Mason, you certainly are not." Cole stood in the doorway, watching them. When Rebecca looked up and met his eyes, something passed between them, a wordless acknowledgment of all they had endured together. Then he turned and left without a word. Rebecca found him an hour later at the stable, tending to the horses. He had already brushed them down and was checking their hooves with careful attention. "You left without saying goodbye," she said. "Goodbyes are not my strength." He did not look up from his work. "Cole, I want to thank you properly for everything you did. Silas wants to thank you too." "No thanks needed. I did what any man would do." "That is not true, and you know it." Rebecca moved closer, studying his profile in the dim light of the stable. "What you did was heroic. You risked your life, pushed yourself to the breaking point, for a man who is barely your friend and a woman who was a complete stranger." Cole finally looked at her, and the intensity in his gray eyes made her breath catch. "You were never a stranger, Rebecca. From the moment you said you were coming into the mountains, I knew what kind of woman you were. Brave, loyal, strong." He looked away. "Silas is a fortunate man. Will you stay in town for a few days, rest before you go back to your cabin?" "No. I have traps to check, and a storm delayed me enough. I will leave at first light." Rebecca felt an unexpected pang at the thought of him leaving. This man had been her protector, her guide, her salvation. The thought of never seeing him again was somehow painful. "Will you at least come to the wedding?" she asked impulsively. When Silas is healed enough, we will marry. I would like you to be there." Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "If I am in the area, I will come, but I make no promises. The mountains keep their own schedule." He left before dawn the next morning, slipping away without fanfare. Rebecca woke to find him gone and felt an emptiness she did not quite understand. The weeks that followed were busy ones. Silas slowly regained his strength, his leg healing well under Horace's care. Rebecca spent her days caring for him, and in the evenings they would talk for hours. She grew to know him better, to appreciate his quiet humor and his steady nature. He was kind, considerate, grateful for her presence. But sometimes, when she lay awake at night, she found herself thinking about Cole Brennan, wondering where he was, if he was safe in his mountain solitude. 6 weeks after their return, Horace pronounced Silas fit enough to walk with a cane. The leg had healed straight, though it pained him in cold weather. He would always have a limp, but he could function, could work. "Time to make an honest woman of you," Silas said to Rebecca, his eyes warm. "If you will still have me, that is. I know this has not been the romantic courtship you deserved." Rebecca took his hands in hers. She cared for this man, respected him, felt affection for him. That was more than many marriages started with. Love would come in time, she told herself. "Yes, Silas, I will marry you." They set the wedding for the first Saturday in January of 1877. It would be a simple ceremony in the trading post, with Martha and George as witnesses. The circuit preacher was due through Silver Creek around that time, making it possible. As the day approached, Rebecca found herself scanning the handful of people in town, looking for a tall, broad-shouldered figure with gray eyes. But Cole did not appear. The wedding morning dawned clear and cold. Martha helped Rebecca dress in a simple blue wool dress that they had altered to fit her. It was not the white gown she had sometimes dreamed of as a girl, but it was practical and pretty, suitable for a frontier wedding. Silas waited at the trading post, looking handsome despite his still gaunt frame, his hair neatly trimmed, his beard combed. He smiled when he saw Rebecca, genuine happiness in his eyes. The preacher, a jovial man named Reverend Matthews, opened his Bible. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." The door of the trading post opened, letting in a gust of cold air. Everyone turned. Cole Brennan stood in the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders, his gray eyes finding Rebecca immediately. "Pardon the interruption, Reverend. I was invited to the wedding." Rebecca felt her heart leap in her chest, a reaction she did not fully understand. "Cole, you came." "I said I would try." He moved into the room, seeming to fill it with his presence. "Please continue." The ceremony proceeded, but Rebecca found herself distracted, acutely aware of Cole's presence at the back of the room. When it came time to say her vows, she stumbled slightly over the words, then forced herself to focus. This was her wedding day. Silas was a good man. This was the right choice. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Matthews said. "You may kiss your bride." Silas kissed her gently, respectfully, and everyone applauded. Rebecca smiled, accepted congratulations from Martha and George, and then found herself face to face with Cole. "Congratulations, Mrs. Thorne," he said formally, extending his hand. She took it, feeling the warmth and strength of his grip. "Thank you for coming. It means a great deal to both of us." Silas hobbled over, leaning on his cane, and gripped Cole's shoulder. "Brother, I cannot thank you enough for everything you have done. You saved my life and made this day possible." "You would have done the same for me." Cole's voice was gruff. They celebrated with a simple meal that Martha had prepared, and someone produced a fiddle, filling the trading post with music. Despite the winter cold and the rough surroundings, it was a joyful occasion. But as the afternoon wore on, Rebecca noticed Cole standing apart, watching the festivities with a distant expression. She excused herself from a conversation with Reverend Matthews and made her way to his side. "You are not enjoying yourself," she observed. "I am not much for crowds or celebrations. Yet you came anyway. I gave my word." Rebecca studied his face, seeing the loneliness etched there despite his stoic expression. On impulse, she touched his arm. "I am glad you did, truly." He looked down at her hand on his arm, and something flickered in his eyes. "You should get back to your husband. It is your wedding day." "Cole, are you all right?" "I am fine." But his voice was tight. "I should be going. I have a long ride back to my cabin. Stay the night at least. The temperature is dropping and it will be full dark soon. I have camped in worse conditions." He gently disengaged from her touch. "Be happy, Rebecca. You deserve it." And then he was gone, slipping out into the twilight before she could protest further. Silas came to her side, slipping his arm around her waist. "He is a good man, but a solitary one. The mountains claimed him long ago." That night, Rebecca and Silas retired to the small cabin he had built on the outskirts of Silver Creek, a temporary dwelling he had constructed while he worked his trap lines. It was rustic but well made, with a solid roof and a good fireplace. Silas had done his best to make it welcoming, with wildflowers dried from the summer and a quilt on the bed that had been his mother's. He was gentle with her, patient, understanding that they were still learning each other. And Rebecca tried her best to be a good wife, to respond with warmth and affection. But as she lay awake afterward, listening to Silas's steady breathing beside her, her mind wandered to the mountains, to a solitary cabin somewhere in the high country, to a man with gray eyes and a heart he kept carefully guarded. She pushed the thoughts away firmly. She was married now. Her path was set. The winter passed slowly. Silas could not work his trap lines with his injured leg, so he took on other work around Silver Creek, repairing equipment, helping at the trading post, anything to earn money to see them through until spring. Rebecca helped where she could, cooking, cleaning, mending. They settled into a comfortable routine. Silas was a good husband, attentive and kind, but Rebecca could not shake the feeling that something was missing, some spark that should be there between a husband and wife. She told herself it was just adjustment, that love took time to grow. But in her heart, she knew the truth. She cared for Silas, but she did not love him. Not in the deep, all-consuming way that she had read about in books, not in the way that made your heart race and your breath catch. Spring came late to Montana territory that year, but when it finally arrived, the snow melted rapidly, and the mountains bloomed with wildflowers. Silas's leg had healed well enough for him to return to his trap lines, though he moved slower than before. "I will need to go up into the high country soon," he told Rebecca one evening in early May. "Check the traps, see what damage the winter did. I will be gone perhaps 2 weeks. "Can I come with you?" Rebecca asked. Silas looked surprised. "It is rough country, Rebecca, not fit for a woman." "I have been in rough country before. I walked through a blizzard to reach you, remember?" He smiled at that. "I do remember. And you were braver than I had any right to expect. But this is different. It is dangerous work, and I will be moving fast, covering a lot of ground." Rebecca wanted to argue, but she could see his mind was made up. "Be safe, then, and come back to me. Always." He kissed her forehead. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Rebecca Thorne. I want you to know that." The words should have warmed her heart, but instead they made her feel guilty, because she could not honestly say the same to him. Silas left 3 days later, his pack loaded with supplies. Rebecca watched him disappear into the trees and felt relief wash over her, followed immediately by guilt for feeling relieved. She threw herself into work, helping Martha at the trading post, tending the small garden she had started behind the cabin. Anything to keep busy. A week after Silas left, Cole Brennan rode into Silver Creek. Rebecca was hanging laundry when she saw him, and her heart gave a traitorous leap. He looked thinner than she remembered, his face more weathered, but his gray eyes were as piercing as ever. He dismounted at the trading post, and Rebecca found herself walking toward him without conscious decision. "Cole," she said, keeping her voice carefully neutral. "This is a surprise." He turned, and she saw something flicker in his expression before it smoothed into polite formality. "Mrs. Thorne, I am just here to trade some furs and pick up supplies. How is Silas?" "He is well. He is up in the high country checking his trap lines." Cole nodded. "His leg healed properly then?" "Yes, thanks to you. He has a limp in cold weather, but he is functional." An awkward silence fell between them. There was so much Rebecca wanted to say, but she did not know how to say it, did not even fully understand what it was she was feeling. "I should go," Cole said finally. "I have business with George." "Wait." The word came out more urgently than Rebecca intended. "Could we talk privately?" He hesitated, and she could see him weighing the request. Finally, he nodded. "Where?" "There is a trail by the creek just beyond the edge of town. I walk there sometimes. Meet me there in an hour." "All right." Rebecca finished hanging the laundry with shaking hands, then changed into a fresh dress, hating herself for caring about her appearance but unable to stop. She walked to the creek trail, her heart pounding. Cole was already there, standing by the water, his hands clasped behind his back. He turned when he heard her approach. "What did you want to talk about?" he asked. Rebecca had not planned what to say, had acted on impulse. Now, standing before him, the words seemed to tangle in her throat. "I wanted to thank you again, for everything you did for us." "You have already thanked me, multiple times. I know, but it does not feel like enough. You gave so much and you asked for nothing in return." "I did not want anything in return." His voice was carefully neutral. "Cole, are you happy, living alone in the mountains?" The question seemed to surprise him. "I am content. That is enough." "Is it? Truly?" He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the walls in his eyes, the careful defenses he kept between himself and the world. "Why are you asking me this, Rebecca?" "Because I think about you sometimes. Wonder if you are well, if you are lonely." "I manage." "That is not the same as being happy." Cole's jaw tightened. "Rebecca, you are a married woman. You should not be concerning yourself with my happiness or lack thereof." "I know." She felt tears prick her eyes, surprised by the sudden rush of emotion. "I know I should not, but I cannot help it. Ever since that journey through the mountains, I have felt connected to you somehow, as if we shared something important. We shared a difficult experience, that is all." "Is it?" Rebecca stepped closer, searching his face. "Cole, tell me honestly, do you feel nothing when you look at me?" She saw him swallow hard, saw the muscle in his jaw jump. "What I feel or do not feel is irrelevant. You are married to a good man, a man who loves you, a man I call friend. I will not dishonor that. Even if I am not happy," the words hung between them, terrible in their honesty. Cole's expression turned hard. "Are you saying you do not love Silas?" "I care for him. I respect him. But no, I do not love him, not the way a wife should love a husband." Rebecca wrapped her arms around herself. "I tried, Cole. I tried so hard, but my heart will not obey my will." "Then you need to try harder." Cole's voice was harsh. "You made vows, Rebecca, sacred vows before God. You cannot just abandon them because you are not feeling romantic." "I know that." "Do you think I do not know that? I am not asking to abandon anything. I just needed to tell someone the truth, to say it out loud." Cole turned away from her, his shoulders rigid. "You should not have told me. You especially should not have told me." "Why?" "Because I am not strong enough to hear it." The words burst out of him, raw and pained. He spun back to face her, and she saw the agony in his eyes. "Do you understand, Rebecca? I have been trying not to think about you every waking moment since the day I met you. I have been trying not to remember the way you looked in the firelight, the courage in your eyes, the sound of your voice. I have been trying not to want something I can never have." Rebecca's breath caught. "Cole!" "No." He held up a hand, stopping her from coming closer. "I will not do this. I will not betray Silas. He is a good man who loves you, and I owe him my loyalty. What I feel does not matter. It matters to me. It cannot matter. You are married, Rebecca. That has to be the end of it." Tears spilled down Rebecca's cheeks. "I wish I had met you first. Before the letters, before I came here, I wish things were different." Cole's face softened slightly, and she saw the same wish reflected in his eyes. "But they are not different. This is the reality we have, and we both have to live with it. So what do? We do the right thing. You go back to your husband and build a life with him. I go back to my mountains and stay there, and we do not see each other again." His voice was firm, but she could hear the pain beneath it. "Never. It would be best." Rebecca wanted to argue, wanted to rail against the unfairness of it all. But she knew he was right. They had no future together, not without betraying everything they both believed in. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I should not have said anything. I should have kept it to myself. Maybe it is better that it is out in the open. Now we both know where we stand." Cole stepped back, putting more distance between them. "I will go now. I will finish my business in town and leave, and I will stay away from Silver Creek in the future." "Cole, wait. You cannot avoid the town forever. It is the only trading post for miles. Then I will trade elsewhere. Or go less often." He met her eyes one last time, and the look was full of longing and regret and firm resolve. "Goodbye, Rebecca. Be happy. Make yourself be happy, even if you have to work at it every day. Silas deserves that from you." He walked away, and Rebecca let him go, tears streaming down her face. When Silas returned 2 weeks later, Rebecca threw herself into being the wife he deserved. She cooked his favorite meals, mended his clothes, listened to his stories of the trap lines with genuine interest. She worked harder at their physical intimacy, trying to find in his arms the passion that her heart stubbornly refused to feel. Silas seemed happy, unaware of the turmoil in her heart. He talked about expanding his trapping territory, about building a bigger cabin before winter, about the future they would build together. And Rebecca smiled and agreed and buried her true feelings deep. Summer passed in a blur of work and routine. Silas went on shorter trips now, never gone for more than a few days at a time. He seemed reluctant to leave her, as if he sensed something was wrong even if he did not know what. In late August, Rebecca realized she was pregnant. The knowledge filled her with a complex mix of emotions. A child would bind her to Silas permanently, would close the door on any other possibility. But it also gave her purpose, a reason to fully commit to the life she had chosen. When she told Silas, he was overjoyed. He swept her into his arms, his eyes bright with tears. "A child. Rebecca, this is wonderful news. I am going to be a father." His happiness was infectious, and for a moment Rebecca allowed herself to share in it fully. This was good news. A baby was a blessing. She would love this child with all her heart. As fall approached and her belly began to swell, Rebecca found a measure of peace. She stopped thinking about gray eyes and broad shoulders, stopped wondering what might have been. She focused on the present, on the tiny life growing inside her, on building a home for her family. But then, in early October, everything changed. Silas came home from checking his nearest trap line with troubling news. "I ran into Ben Cartwright at the creek. He said there has been trouble in the high country. Some trappers got into a dispute over territory, and shots were fired. One man is dead and another is badly wounded." Rebecca felt a chill run through her. Who? Cartwright did not know names, but he said the wounded man was tall, dark-haired, kept to himself mostly. Lives way up in the North Pass. Cole. Rebecca breathed the name, her hand going to her swollen belly. Silas looked at her sharply. Could be. Cartwright said the man managed to get himself to a shelter, but he is alone up there and in bad shape. No one is willing to go help him because of the early snows already hitting the high country. Rebecca stood abruptly. We have to help him. Rebecca, even if it is Cole and we do not know that for certain, the trip would be dangerous. And you are pregnant. I cannot ask you to risk that. Then you go. Take supplies, take medicine. Silas, if it is Cole, he saved your life. We cannot leave him to die alone. Silas ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn. I am not sure I can make the trip alone. My leg is not what it was, and the North Pass is treacherous even in good conditions. With early snows, it could be suicide. Then we go together. I made the trip once before when I was not used to the mountains. I can make it again. You were not carrying my child before. Rebecca moved to him, taking his hands in hers. Silas, you are a good man. One of the best I have ever known. If there is even a chance that Cole is up there dying, can you live with yourself if we do not try to help him? He looked into her eyes for a long moment, and she wondered if he could see the deeper reason for her urgency, the feelings she had tried so hard to bury. But if he did, he gave no sign. We leave at first light, he said finally. But if at any point the trip becomes too dangerous for you or the baby, we turn back. Agreed. Agreed. They spent the evening preparing. Martha was horrified when she heard their plan but helped gather supplies anyway. George provided cold weather gear and extra blankets. You are both crazy, Martha said, but her eyes were worried. If Cole Brennan is hurt up there, it is a tragedy, but you have a baby to think about now, Rebecca. I know, but this is something we have to do. They left Silver Creek before dawn, riding into the crisp autumn air. The journey was familiar and strange all at once. Rebecca remembered every step of the path from that winter trip, but now the mountains were different, dressed in fall colors instead of white, the air cold but not yet bitter. They made good time the first day, reaching the shelter where they had left the horses during the winter rescue. The structure was still intact, and they settled the animals for the night. Silas built a fire while Rebecca prepared a simple meal. As they ate, he spoke carefully. Rebecca, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Her heart clenched. What is it? Do you have feelings for Cole Brennan? Rebecca set down her cup, her hands trembling. She had known this moment might come, but she had not expected it now, on the side of a mountain, with Cole possibly dying somewhere ahead. Yes, she said quietly. I do. But I have never acted on them, Silas. I swear to you, nothing improper has ever happened between us. Silas nodded slowly, his face unreadable in the firelight. I suspected as much. The way you looked at each other during the wedding, the way you react when someone mentions his name. He paused. Do you love him? Rebecca felt tears sting her eyes. I do not know. Maybe. But it does not matter because I made vows to you. I chose you. I am carrying your child. Cole and I both know that there can never be anything between us. But you wish there could be. I wish a lot of things were different, but wishing does not change reality. Rebecca reached for his hand. Silas, you are my husband. I am committed to you and to our marriage. I will not betray you. He squeezed her hand gently. I know you would not. You are too good a person for that. He stared into the fire. Truth is, Rebecca, I knew when I asked you to come here that it was a gamble. I knew you might not love me, might never love me, but I was lonely, and you seemed kind and brave in your letters, and I hoped that would be enough. It can be enough. It will be enough. Can I ask you something else? If Cole were free, if you had met him before me, would you have chosen him? Rebecca wanted to lie, wanted to spare him the pain. But he deserved honesty. "I do not know. Maybe, but I did not meet him first. I met you, I chose you. And I am going to make this marriage work, Silas. I promise you that." He pulled her close, and she rested her head against his shoulder. "I am not angry, Rebecca. How can I be angry about feelings you cannot control? I just needed to know where I stood. You are my husband, the father of my child. That is where you stand." They held each other as the fire burned low, and Rebecca felt the weight of her choices settle more firmly on her shoulders. She had made her bed, as the saying went. Now she would lie in it. The next day brought them deeper into the mountains. The temperature dropped sharply, and they saw the first signs of snow on the upper peaks. Silas moved more slowly than he would have liked, his leg clearly paining him, but he pushed on without complaint. By late afternoon, they reached the area where, according to Ben Cartwright's directions, they should find the shelter. But the landscape was vast and confusing, full of rocky outcroppings and dense stands of pine. "We will have to split up to search," Silas said. "Cover more ground before dark." "Is that wise? We will stay within shouting distance. If you find anything, fire 2 shots in the air. I will do the same." Rebecca did not like it, but she saw the logic. They separated, she heading west while Silas went north, each calling out Cole's name as they searched. Rebecca had been searching for perhaps half an hour when she heard it, a faint sound that might have been a groan. She called out again. "Cole! Cole Brennan, can you hear me?" Another sound, clearer this time. She pushed through a thick stand of pines and found herself in a small clearing. There, tucked against a rocky overhang, was a crude shelter, and slumped against its entrance, barely conscious, was Cole. Rebecca fired 2 shots in the air, then ran to his side. "Cole, Cole, it is Rebecca. Can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, clouded with fever and pain. "Rebecca, no. You should not be here. Dangerous." "Hush, we came to help you. Where are you hurt?" She could see blood on his shirt, old and dried. When she carefully pulled the fabric aside, she found a wound in his left side, inflamed and infected. He had done his best to bandage it, but it was clear he needed proper medical attention. "Gunshot?" she asked. "Knife. Argument over trap lines got the better of me." His words were slurred, barely coherent. Silas burst into the clearing, breathing hard. He took in the scene instantly and moved to Cole's other side. "How bad?" "Infected wound. Fever. He is in bad shape, Silas. We need to get that infection under control before we can move him." Silas was already pulling supplies from his pack. "Rebecca, start a fire. Get water boiling. We need to clean this wound properly." They worked through the evening and into the night. Rebecca boiled water and cleaned the wound while Silas held Cole down when the pain made him thrash. They packed the injury with poultices made from herbs that Silas carried for just such emergencies, then bound it tight with clean bandages. Cole drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes rambling. At one point, deep in the night, he grasped Rebecca's hand. "Should have stayed away," he mumbled. "Tried to stay away. Could not stop thinking about you." Rebecca glanced at Silas, but he was across the shelter preparing more medicine. She squeezed Cole's hand. "You need to rest, save your strength. Tell Silas, tell him I am sorry. Never meant to want what was his. SHH. There is nothing to apologize for, just rest." By morning his fever had broken slightly. He was still weak, still in pain, but the immediate crisis had passed. Silas examined the wound and pronounced it cleaner, the inflammation reduced. "We need to get him back to town," Silas said. "Horace can do more for him than we can here, but the trip will be hard on him." "I can make it," Cole said, his voice stronger than it had been. He tried to sit up and immediately went pale. "Easy," Rebecca said, supporting his shoulders. "You lost a lot of blood. You need to take this slow." Cole looked at her, then at Silas, and she saw awareness dawn in his gray eyes. "You both came together for me." "Of course we did," Silas said simply. "You are a friend, more than a friend. You saved my life." "Did you think we would leave you to die alone?" Something complicated crossed Cole's face. "After everything, I would not have blamed you. There is nothing to blame anyone for." Silas met Cole's eyes steadily. "We all have feelings we cannot control. What matters is what we do about those feelings. And from what I can see, everyone involved has done the right thing." Cole looked away. "I tried to stay away, tried to forget. I know. But right now, none of that matters. Right now, we focus on getting you well." Silas stood. "I am going to rig a travois. We will move you slowly, carefully. It will take us twice as long to get back, but we will get you there." The journey back to Silver Creek was grueling. Cole's wound reopened twice, requiring them to stop and rebandage it. Rebecca's pregnancy made her tire more easily than she wanted to admit, though she tried to hide it. And Silas's leg pained him constantly, though he never complained. But they pushed on, driven by the shared goal of saving Cole's life. They reached Silver Creek 6 days after they had left, exhausted and filthy but alive. Horace took one look at Cole and immediately commandeered a room at the trading post, setting up a makeshift surgery. "The wound is badly infected," he said after examining it. "But you folks did good work keeping it clean. He has a fighting chance." For 3 days, Cole's fate hung in the balance. The infection raged through his body, and there were times when Horace thought they would lose him. Rebecca and Silas took turns sitting with him, cooling his fever, making him drink when he could. On the 4th day, his fever broke for good. Rebecca was with him when he woke, really woke for the first time. His gray eyes were clear, focused. "Rebecca, you are going to be all right," she said, relief flooding through her. "The infection is broken. Horace says you will recover fully with time and rest." Cole tried to sit up, then thought better of it. "Where is Silas?" "At our cabin. He has been here for days. I made him go rest." "How long have I been here?" "A week since we brought you back. 3 weeks total since you were injured." He closed his eyes. "I owe you both my life, again." "You owe us nothing. We are friends, Cole. Friends help each other." He opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked at her, his gaze dropping to her rounded belly. "You are with child." "Yes, due in the spring. Congratulations. Silas must be very happy." "He is." Rebecca hesitated, then said what she had been holding in for weeks. "Cole, Silas knows." "About my feelings," I told him. Cole went very still, and he was hurt, but he understood. "He knows nothing improper has ever happened between us. He knows I am committed to my marriage." She paused. "I think he has suspected for a while. He is a better man than I am. I am not sure I could be as understanding if our positions were reversed." "You are a good man too, Cole Brennan. One of the best I have ever known. And I think, maybe, we can find a way to be friends. Real friends without the weight of unspoken feelings between us." "I do not know if I can do that." "I think you can. I think we both can. Because the alternative is never seeing each other again, and I do not want that. I value you too much to lose you completely." Cole was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. "I will try for you and for Silas. I will try." Over the following weeks, as Cole recovered, an unexpected dynamic developed. Silas would come to visit him, bringing news from town, playing cards with him to pass the time. And slowly, the two men developed a genuine friendship, one built on mutual respect and shared experiences. Rebecca watched it happen with a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief because it meant they could all move forward, sadness because it underscored what could never be. By December, Cole was well enough to travel. He announced his intention to return to his cabin before the deep snows set in. "You should wait until spring," Silas argued. "You are still weak. Another infection could kill you. I have been here too long already. I need to get back to my life. Cole stood, testing his strength. He had lost weight during his illness, but his powerful frame was already filling out again. Besides, you two need privacy. You have a baby coming. You do not need me underfoot. You are not underfoot, Rebecca said. You are welcome to stay as long as you need. I know and I appreciate it, but it is time. He gathered his things, accepting supplies that Silas insisted on giving him. I will come back in the spring, check in. Make sure the little one arrived safely. You promise? Rebecca asked. I promise. He left on a clear, cold morning. Rebecca and Silas stood together, watching him ride away, and Rebecca felt a chapter closing. Are you all right? Silas asked quietly. Yes, I think I finally am. And it was true. Watching Cole leave hurt, but it was a clean hurt, a necessary one. They had all done the right thing, all chosen honor and duty over selfish desire. That had to mean something. Winter settled in, deep and cold. Rebecca's belly grew round and full. Silas doted on her, building a beautiful cradle from pine wood, preparing the cabin for their child's arrival. And as the months passed, Rebecca found that she was happy. Not in the wild, passionate way of romance novels, but in a quieter, deeper way. She had a good man who loved her, a warm home, a baby on the way. She had made the right choice. On a bright April morning in 1878, Rebecca gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas after Silas's father. Silas held his son with tears streaming down his face. He is perfect. Rebecca, he is absolutely perfect. Rebecca smiled, exhausted but content. He is our perfect little boy. True to his word, Cole appeared in Silver Creek a week later. He arrived with gifts, a hand-carved wooden horse for the baby and a beautiful fur blanket for Rebecca. He is a fine-looking boy, Cole said, peering down at the sleeping infant. Got his father's nose. And his mother's eyes, Silas said proudly. Would you like to hold him? Cole looked uncertain but accepted the baby carefully, his huge hands gentle. Thomas stirred but did not wake. Rebecca watched the scene and felt a pang of something she could not quite name. He is lucky to have you both as parents, Cole said quietly. He will grow up strong and loved. Will you stay for a few days? Silas asked. We are having a celebration, just a few folks from town. We would like you to be there. I would be honored. The celebration was simple but joyful. Martha and George came, as did a few other settlers who had become friends over the past year and a half. They ate and laughed, and for a few hours, Rebecca allowed herself to simply enjoy the moment. Late in the evening, she found herself alone with Cole on the porch of the cabin. The sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple. You look happy, Cole observed. I am. I truly am. It took me a while to get here, but I have found my place. She looked at him. What about you? Are you happy? He considered the question. I am at peace. Maybe that is the best I can hope for. It does not have to be. You could find someone, Cole, build a life. You have so much to offer. Maybe someday, but not yet. The mountains still suit me. He smiled slightly. Though I admit, it is good to have friends to come back to. You will always have that. Always. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset together, and Rebecca realized that this was enough. They could not have everything they wanted, but they had something valuable: friendship, respect, and a shared history that bound them together in its own way. Cole left the next morning, but he came back regularly over the years that followed. He was there when Rebecca gave birth to twin girls 2 years later, and there when Silas finally saved enough money to build the larger cabin he had dreamed of. He became Uncle Cole to the children, teaching young Thomas to track and hunt, telling the twins stories of the mountains. He never married, never settled down, but he was not alone. He had his mountains, and he had a family of sorts, Even if they were not his by blood or law, Rebecca and Silas's marriage deepened over the years, growing into real love forged through shared trials and small daily kindnesses. She never forgot the feelings she had once had for Cole, but they transformed into something gentler, something that could coexist with her love for her husband. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Silas took Rebecca's hand across the dinner table. Their children were asleep in the loft, and the cabin was quiet. "I want to thank you," he said. "For what?" "For choosing to be happy. I know it was not always easy. I know there were times when you questioned your choice. But you stayed and you built this life with me, and I am grateful every day for it." Rebecca squeezed his hand. "I made the right choice, Silas. It took me a while to see it, but you were what I needed. You are what I still need. I love you, Rebecca Thorne. I love you too," and it was true. The love she felt for him now was different from what she had felt for Cole, less urgent but no less real. It was the love of partnership, of shared history, of raising children and weathering storms together. It was enough. More than enough. Cole continued to visit through the years, his hair slowly graying, his face weathering further. He became a fixture in their lives, the children's favorite uncle, a trusted friend to both Rebecca and Silas. One autumn evening, when Thomas was 15 and the twins were 13, Cole arrived with unexpected news. "I sold my trap lines," he announced over dinner. Everyone stared at him. "Why would you do that?" Silas asked. "I am getting older. The winters are getting harder. And I realize that I have been living half a life, hiding in the mountains, avoiding the very thing I need most." He looked around the table at the family gathered there. Connection, community, people who matter. "So what will you do?" Rebecca asked. "I bought the old Sawyer place just outside of town. I'm going to try my hand at ranching, raise some cattle, maybe some horses, and I will be close enough to visit properly, not just a few times a year." The children cheered. Silas grinned and clapped Cole on the back. And Rebecca felt tears spring to her eyes, happy tears. "I think that is wonderful, Cole, truly wonderful." He met her eyes across the table, and she saw peace there, real peace. "It is time, past time. I have been alone long enough." Cole did indeed settle into ranching, and to everyone's surprise, he was good at it. His cattle thrived, and his reputation for fairness and hard work spread. And 2 years after he moved to the Sawyer place, he met a widow named Eleanor who had come west with her sister's family. Eleanor was 40, practical and kind, with a sharp wit and no illusions about the hardships of frontier life. She and Cole courted slowly, carefully, two people who had both been hurt by life and were cautious about trying again. When Cole announced his intention to marry, Rebecca and Silas hosted the engagement celebration. Rebecca embraced Eleanor warmly, genuinely happy for Cole. "You are good for him," she told the other woman. "He has been alone too long. He is a good man, a bit rough around the edges, but good." Eleanor studied Rebecca with perceptive eyes. "He speaks highly of you and Silas, says you saved his life more than once. We helped each other. That is what friends do." Cole and Eleanor married in the spring of 1888, a decade after Rebecca and Silas. It was a joyful occasion, and watching Cole smile at his bride, Rebecca felt the last lingering threads of what might have been finally release their hold on her heart. Life went on, as it does. Thomas grew into a fine young man, eventually taking over much of the work on Silas's trap lines. The twins, Mary and Elizabeth, grew into beautiful young women with their own dreams and desires. Silas's leg never fully healed, and as he aged, the old injury pained him more. He retired from trapping when Thomas was old enough to take over, instead spending his time teaching youngsters in Silver Creek to read and write, a small school he established in the back of the trading post. Rebecca helped him with the school, finding joy in teaching again after so many years. She also took in sewing work and became known for her beautiful quilts. Cole and Alina had a good marriage, though they never had children of their own. Instead, they poured their energy into their ranch and into the community, becoming pillars of Silver Creek's growth. On a summer evening in 1895, Rebecca sat on the porch of her home, now a grandmother twice over thanks to Thomas and his young wife. Silas dozed in the chair beside her, his hand resting on her knee. They were in their 60s now, gray and weathered but content. Cole and Alina rode up and Rebecca smiled in welcome. "This is a surprise. We were not expecting you. We were in the area and thought we would stop by," Alina said, dismounting with practiced ease. "How are you both?" "We are well, getting older but well." They visited for a while, sharing news and laughter. And as the sun set over the mountains, Rebecca looked at the people gathered around her husband of nearly 20 years, her dear friend Cole and his wife, the life they had all built together, and felt profound gratitude. She had come west as a desperate young woman seeking a new start. She had found love, though not in the way she expected. She had faced impossible choices and made them the best she could. And in the end, she had built something real and lasting. "What are you thinking about?" Silas asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "How lucky I am. How blessed we have been." He smiled and kissed her forehead. "I am the lucky one. You took a chance on a broken-down mountain man with a damaged leg and a lonely heart. You gave me everything I never knew I needed." We gave each other everything we needed. Cole raised his glass. "To old friends and new beginnings. To the choices that define us and the grace that allows us to live with them. To love in all its forms," Alina added, smiling at her husband. "To family," Silas said, looking at Rebecca with eyes full of warmth. "To family," Rebecca echoed, and they all drank together as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The years continued to pass. Silver Creek grew from a rough trading post settlement into a proper town with a church, a real schoolhouse, and even a small newspaper. Rebecca and Silas watched the changes with satisfaction, knowing they had played their part in building something lasting. When Silas fell ill in the winter of 1902, Rebecca nursed him with the same determination she had shown in the mountains so many years before. But this time, love and skill were not enough. He passed quietly one February night, his hand in hers, their children and grandchildren gathered around. Rebecca mourned him deeply, genuinely. He had been her partner for a quarter-century, her friend, the father of her children. Whatever complicated feelings had existed at the start of their marriage had long since transformed into real, abiding love. Cole helped her through the grief, he and Alina constant presences in the difficult days after the funeral. And Rebecca leaned on their friendship gratefully, drawing strength from the bonds they had forged so long ago. She lived another 12 years, long enough to see all 3 of her children married and settled, long enough to hold great-grandchildren in her arms. She spent her final years peacefully, teaching in the school that Silas had founded, creating beautiful quilts that would be treasured by her family for generations, and sitting on her porch watching the mountains she had come to love. Cole visited often, sometimes alone after Alina passed in 1910, sometimes with one or another of Rebecca's grandchildren who had taken to following him around like he was the wisest man in the world. In many ways he was. On a warm spring afternoon in 1914, Rebecca sat on her porch with Cole beside her. She was 79 years old, frail now but still sharp of mind. "You ever think about it?" she asked him. "About what might have been?" He knew immediately what she meant. "Sometimes, but not with regret." "Not anymore." "Nor I. We made the right choices, Cole, all of us did." "Yes, We honored what was right and we found happiness anyway. Maybe not the happiness we first imagined, but happiness nonetheless. Silas was a good man. He deserved my loyalty and he earned my love. He was the best of us, Cole agreed. And a leaner was exactly what I needed when I finally stopped running from life. They sat in comfortable silence, two old friends who had shared extraordinary experiences and ordinary years in equal measure. I am glad you were part of my life, Cole Brennan. And I am glad you were part of mine, Rebecca Thorne. Rebecca passed away peacefully in her sleep a few weeks later, surrounded by family and friends. At her funeral, Cole stood with tears streaming down his weathered face, mourning not just the woman but the extraordinary journey they had all taken together. He spoke at the service, his voice strong despite his age. Rebecca Mason came to Montana Territory as a mail-order bride in 1876, a frightened young woman seeking a new beginning. She became Rebecca Thorne, wife and mother, teacher and friend, the heart of this community. She faced impossible odds with courage, made difficult choices with grace, and built a life of meaning and love. We were all better for knowing her. Thomas, now a man of 50 with his own gray streaking his dark hair, approached Cole after the service. "Uncle Cole, she left something for you. She made me promise to give it to you after she was gone." He handed Cole a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a quilt, one of Rebecca's finest, worked in shades of blue and gray that reminded Cole of mountain skies. And tucked inside was a letter, written in her careful hand. Cole read it alone that evening in his quiet house. "My dear friend, if you are reading this, then I've gone on to whatever awaits us beyond this life. I hope I will see Silas again, and Alina and all those we have loved and lost. But before I go, I wanted to thank you. Thank you for saving my life and Silas's life. Thank you for being honorable when it would have been easier not to be. Thank you for your friendship through all the years, for being Uncle Cole to my children and a true friend to us both. I want you to know that I never regretted my choices. I loved Silas truly and deeply, and our life together was good. But I also treasured what you and I shared, that brief, bright moment of possibility, and the longer, steadier glow of genuine friendship that followed. You are one of the best men I have ever known. I hope you know that. I hope you have found peace and happiness in your own way. Live well, my friend. And when your time comes, know that you made a difference in this world, in my life, and in the lives of all who knew you." With love and gratitude, Rebecca Cole folded the letter carefully and sat for a long time in the gathering darkness, remembering a young woman stepping off a stagecoach into a blizzard, the courage in her eyes, and the extraordinary journey they had all shared. He lived another 5 years, dying at the age of 87, surrounded by the extended Thorne family who had adopted him as their own. In his will, he left his ranch to Thomas, with the provision that it would always remain in the family. And years later, when Thomas's grandchildren asked about the old quilt that hung in a place of honor in the ranch house, they would hear the story of how their great-grandmother and great-grandfather had met, of the mountain man who had saved them both, and of the unspoken feelings that had tested them all but ultimately made them stronger. It became a family legend, passed down through the generations, a story of duty and honor, of love in all its complicated forms, of choices made and honored. A story of the Old West when life was hard, and survival was never guaranteed, but when people still found ways to build lasting connections and meaningful lives. And though the original players had long since passed into history, their story lived on, a reminder that sometimes the right choice is not the easy one, that love comes in many forms, and that a life well lived is measured not in grand passions but in daily acts of courage, loyalty, and grace. The mountains still stood, eternal and unchanging, witnesses to all the small human dramas played out in their shadow. And in Silver Creek, now a thriving town with paved streets and electric lights, the descendants of Rebecca Thorne and Silas Thorne and Cole Brennan continued to build their lives, carrying forward the legacy of strength and honor that had been passed down to them. The story that had begun with a desperate young woman and a mountain man's hunt through the bitter cold to save his mail-order bride had become something larger, a testament to the power of choosing right over easy, of friendship over passion, and of building happiness through commitment and daily kindness rather than waiting for it to fall from the sky. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy of all.